Heart of the Wolf. A steamy paranormal romance story written and produced by author A. Mariposa. Chapter 11.
Gareth got into Jack's auto repair early on Sunday morning. He was in a shit mood and he wanted to do something productive. He parked his Camaro in front of the auto shop in the chill fog. The sun was still climbing over the mountains, and the October air was frosty. Tendrils of mist clung to the pine trees in the forest behind the building. Highway 20 was pretty quiet this early in the day, before the morning rush to Davenport. His breath rose in little puffs of vapor. He wore a heavy, quilted flannel jacket and work jeans. It was fucking cold. Black River was nothing like the arid Sonoran desert where he grew up. He glanced at the clock on the dash and gauged the time difference. It would be early morning over there, but his mom should be awake. She was a gym rat and preferred to work out before the sun came up. He took out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts. He hit the dial button. The phone rang a few times before a woman picked up.
Am I imagining this, or is my boy calling me?
Gareth grinned. Hey, Mama.
Mijo. So then I'm not crazy.
Not yet. You still got time. His mom laughed.
So why are you calling me? ¿Qué haces? I got your cousins here visiting this weekend. They're asking about your new address. No one knows where you moved to. Are you going to tell us, or just stay mysterious?
Gareth dodged, thinking of his old man and his brothers. His family was pretty nuts. He didn't want unexpected visitors. Nah, not yet. Say hi for me, he said.
Ok, chico loco.
Hey though, I got a question for you.
¿Qué quieres?
It's about wolves. His mom went quiet on the phone. He heard a slight scuffling as she moved through the room, and a soft click as a door closed. He guessed she had stepped outside on the porch. Then his mom said, curiously,
What about wolves?
I think I met one. A girl.
¿Verdad? That's rare these days.
Yeah, she's different. She hasn't gone through the change yet. When does that happen? Is it the same as males?
Sí, más o menos. It can vary.
His mom pursed her lips over the phone. Gareth could almost see her standing in the silver early morning light of the Sonoran desert. A light shawl wrapped around her shoulders, overlooking a pristine swimming pool in the backyard of a Spanish-style mansion. His family had struggled when he was a teen, but these past few years the Sonoran pack was thriving. Gareth didn't know what kind of business his father was involved in. He'd rather not ask, but at least his mother and his brothers were doing well. He couldn't say he didn't benefit either. His mother fronted the money for the down payment on his place. He could afford the house now, but those first few years running the auto shop had been a bit dicey. She continued.
The change can happen suddenly. With you boys, it was like una granada blowing up as soon as you turned 14. Pero las mujeres son delicadas. Your Aunt Juana and Rosalia all entered the change at different ages. Para chicas, the age she becomes a woman will make a difference. How old is she?
Definitely past puberty, Gareth said. She's turning 20.
Ah, yeah, that is late. Okay. Sometimes being all alone can stop it.
Alone? Gareth echoed. Like separated from her pack? Does that happen a lot?
A veces, it's more common now because of the foster system. Wolf pups need other wolves to stimulate them. Les dan vitalidad. They pass along their vitality. If they're isolated, then pups never really get a chance to come out.
I didn't realize that was a thing, Gareth said.
Well, it is. Your tío and your cousins took you boys on a lot of fishing trips. And you had me and Poppy at home. It's why we stick to the pack.
Right. Gareth didn't miss the subtle nag about sticking to the pack. He knew she didn't approve of him leaving their family behind in Arizona, but he couldn't live around his dad anymore. He and his old man never got along. Their last altercation got bloody. He ran a hand down the tattoos on his forearm. It was better for the family if he ducked out. Any other reason? Gareth asked.
Well, there's one more. If a wolf child is malnourished, or living under a lot of stress, that can also stop the change. Natural self-preservation, or just the physical toll of the stress.
That's something to think about, Gareth murmured.
You sure this chica is a wolf?
Oh yeah, absolutamente. But she hasn't changed yet, so she doesn't know.
Was she adopted?
Kind of.
Careful me, Joe. Remember your father is an alpha. Your wolf blood is potent. If you're spending a lot of time together, you might trigger the change without meaning to.
Oh, I mean to, he muttered.
Oh no. Mijo, escúchame. She's going to need support if she starts to change and no one tells her what's going on. It can be very dangerous. You know what happened to Rosalia, and we only just got her back.
Gareth's brow darkened. Yes, he knew Rosalia's story very well. His mom's youngest sister was abducted by slave traders and sold as breeding stock on the black market when she was 15. Unfortunately, it was a common story in lichen families. Females were rare, and they could be auctioned for as much as $250,000. Her mother's family had searched for Rosalia for 25 years before they were finally reunited. His aunt lived in Phoenix now with the rest of the Sonoran pack, but she was a very private person. He didn't know much about Rosalia's life. His aunt didn't share her story with many people. His mom and cousins knew more about it than he did. I hear you, Gareth said. I know the danger. Don't worry, Mama, I can handle it. I will keep an eye on her.
I worry for this girl. You keep a close eye on her. Remember Rosalia. Bad men are everywhere.
Gareth was distracted by Vin's black truck pulling up in front of the car garage. Shit, he'd forgotten that Vin was coming in for overtime today. He was hoping to get some space to think. He suspected Vin had a girl now and needed the extra cash. But he didn't know for sure. If it didn't relate to work, they didn't talk much. Gotta go, Mama, he said. Gotta work.
Ahí, mijo, I hope it works out with this wolf girl.
Gareth grinned. Sure, Mom. Say hi to my cousins. Love you.
Te quiero. Call more often, okay?
I will, I promise. Adios. He hung up the phone with a sigh. He felt a little better having this information in his back pocket. He had been thinking about Maddy's wolf blood since last night. If she changed, then he could explain the life mate thing to her, and all this wouldn't seem so strange. She'd get it. She would have to. But she was very delayed. Now he knew what was delaying her. Of course it was Dean. The stress of living in that house, her isolation and the whole fucking situation had compounded into this mess. His instincts were right. Living in that mobile home wasn't healthy for her. He had to get her out.
Remember your father is an alpha. Your wolf blood is potent. If you're spending a lot of time together, you might trigger the change without meaning to.
His mother had shared some priceless information, so his alpha blood might trigger her change. Alphas were not like regular Lycan. They were a cut above the rest. Stronger, fiercer, a little crazier. His father was a prime example of that. Gareth had spent the last several years trying to get away from the devil blood that defined him. Now it was finally coming in handy. Supposedly only alphas had life mates, though he wasn't sure of that, so little was known anymore about the bond. He could have asked his mom, but he didn't want to get her excited. A life mate was a very big deal. She would want to fly out to meet Maddy, and that wasn't a good idea right now. He got out of the car and slammed the door behind him. Then he went to unlock the garage doors. His jaw was clenched. Vin was climbing out of his black truck.
Oh, hey, boss. Thought you were taking Sundays off.
Plans changed, Gareth growled as he unlocked the two big garage doors and slid them up overhead. He had hired Vin over the summer to help him handle the rush. The kid wasn't much good with customers, but he was a whiz at fixing cars, and he learned the new diagnostic equipment in a day. He liked to tinker and figure stuff out. He was awkward, but useful, and he wanted to work. Gareth wanted to keep him around for as long as Vin wanted to stay. Luckily, the busy summer season was slowing down. Over the summer, they were both working 7 days a week and raking in the cash. Now in October, the mountain passes were closed due to heavy storms, less traffic coming through from the other side of the mountain. So the shop got a break. Still, there was always something to do. Gareth stood face to face with a big diesel F-250 that needed a new head gasket. Easy enough to swap out, and the part just came in. He rounded the truck and went to change into his work overalls. You hittin' the Mercedes? He called to Vin.
Yup, just finishing the tires.
The 23-year-old kid turned on his Bluetooth speakers and started blasting music. Vin hit the button and boosted up the Mercedes on the other lift. Gareth thought of Maddy as he put on his work uniform. He had been pissed since Friday night, It all went south like a landslide after Dean showed up. Maddy was a different person around her stepdad. He regretted taking her to get the dog, but he supposed her stepdad's return to her life was inevitable. He just wished it wasn't so soon, right when he was gaining her trust. For a moment in the arcade, she had let down her walls and acted her age. He loved it. She was laid back and hyper all at once, curious and ready to play. He was high energy, and she kept up easily. She laughed at his dumb humor. He saw her genuinely smile at him, and she had dimples. Fucking adorable. But then he'd gone and fucked it all up. He called her out on her caretaking. She reminded him of his mom that way. He saw the pattern, so he said something. But she was young, and he was too honest, too blunt. He let his anger get the best of him. He wasn't a perfect man by any means, and he had been too harsh. He knew she had some figuring out to do. He couldn't make her leave her stepdad behind, though after seeing the ragged scars on her back and the trash throughout the trailer, it seemed like a no-brainer. But good people were loyal, sometimes loyal to the wrong people. And, in her twisted world, that was the only father she knew. Gareth knew how addiction worked. He had dealt with it in his own family. His dad, the alpha of the Phoenix Pack, was straightened out now after suffering a major heart attack and losing half his kidney function. But he was still a cold and violent man. How the rest of the pack put up with such an alpha, Gareth was done wondering. He wouldn't go back. Not until his old man was dead. He was worried about what would happen to Maddy if he left her alone in that house. Dean Harvey was a fool, not a manic tyrant like his own pops, but he was still dangerous. Would she turn up with more bruises? Gareth pulled in a deep breath. He might have to murder Dean if he saw one more scratch on that girl. Gareth grabbed the box with the new head gasket and walked back into the shop. Sunlight spilled into the shop floor through the two open doors. Looked like the heavy, overcast sky was breaking up a bit. Nice to have a break in the rain. He got Vin lined out on the Mercedes. Then he opened the hood on the F-250. Time to get his hands busy. Then his cell phone buzzed from the shelf behind him. Fucking finally. Was Maddy ready to talk yet? He had dropped off some things for her that morning, hoping to draw her out. He paused to check his phone. Damn. Another text from Roxy.
Hey, big guy. Are you busy tonight? You should come over.
Gareth sighed. Roxy was all right. They had fucked around for a bit, off and on. Usually late-night stuff. He never invested or talked about his life. They had both agreed to keep things casual. He never met her friends or family. Hell, they only hooked up a few times. When she started trying to get closer to him, he took a big step back. That was the last they spoke. He was surprised she still had his number. They hadn't spoken in a few months. Maddy was his life mate, but for the past 5 years she had been way too young for him to approach her, and wolf blood ran hot. So Roxy became a hookup for those nights when he thought he would break his wrist from beating off. He never meant to use her. He thought their arrangement was mutual. But last July, Roxy confessed her feelings to him. He simply didn't feel the same way, so he'd been forced to break things off. He hovered for a moment, wondering what to say. Then finally he texted back. Hey, sorry I can't. I'm seeing someone.
Huh? You're kidding? For real?
Yeah. He texted. I got a girlfriend now.
Since when? You told me you didn't get serious.
Well, things changed. I'm serious now.
Wow, that's messed up. So when you said you didn't get serious, you just meant with me?
It's nothing personal, Roxy. I thought we both agreed it was just a temporary thing. She sent a much longer text. He glanced over it, but all he saw was a bunch of cuss words calling him a jackass. Maybe he deserved some of it, but he didn't think so. He was pretty selective with his sexual partners. He thought Roxy could handle the arrangement. Guess he was wrong. He selected her name in his app and blocked her number. Then he went back to work.
Sunday morning, Maddy woke up late. She was exhausted, but the dog was whining to go out. Right, new responsibility. She got up and used the bathroom. Her head injury looked healed enough to take the bandage off. She felt wistful throwing it in the trash. She pulled on her hoodie and a pair of black leggings, tied on Joker's paracord leash, then opened the back door to take Joker on a walk. She almost tripped over a giant bag of dog food and several grocery bags laid out on the covered porch. Next to the groceries was her backpack. She stared at the collection, stunned, then she dropped the leash and almost collapsed. She had cried most of the previous night and slept like shit. If her backpack was there, that meant Gareth had delivered these groceries for her. But he hadn't said a word. Hadn't asked to see her or talk. No texts or missed calls. Maddy shuffled nervously through the groceries. He even bought her toilet paper. Damn. He must have dropped almost $200 on all this. Her kitchen would be stocked for weeks. All right, so the groceries were probably to relieve his conscience. But he returned all her personal stuff too. She brought everything inside, then she went through her backpack. She found her homework and her change of clothes, her phone charger, CBD pen, the white stuffed bear, and other items. She even found the little spider ring he had won for her at Zippy's. But still no text. Shit. Maybe it really was a breakup. Tears stung her eyes again. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. She was supposed to give him a silent treatment while she thought things through. Then he was supposed to cave in. He would send her a text message admitting he was mean and wrong for all the shit he said on Friday night. He was wrong about her stepdad, wrong about her enabling, wrong about her life. He was just wrong. Then he would beg her to forgive him. But now the tables were turned. Was he done with her? Had she pushed him too far? Her stepdad was still asleep on the couch. Maddy retreated to her bedroom with her stuff and shut the door behind her. Then she held the bear for a moment, feeling anxious and sad. She didn't know what to think. Was this his way of saying goodbye? Summoning her courage, she took out her phone. She typed out a message and hit send. Thanks for the groceries. Then she waited. It became apparent that Gareth wasn't going to respond quickly. So she shoved her phone in her pocket, flipped up her hood, and went to take Joker on a stroll through the woods. As she walked, she remembered her surreal encounter with the wolf the day before. She looked around the woods a lot more than usual, jumping at every rustle in the bushes or snap of a twig, but she didn't see any big black beasts roaming about. She sighed. Wolves hunted over a wide range of territory. Maybe the beast was on some other part of the mountain, and maybe that was a good thing. On the way back, her phone pinged.
Sure thing. Make sure you eat.
She didn't know what it meant. Why did he care if she ate, if he was breaking up with her? She tried to imagine where he was and what he was doing. She texted again. So, are you busy? Gareth replied after a minute.
Just working. What's up?
Didn't hear from you yesterday.
You said you needed space, so I was giving you that.
Maddy chewed her lip. She had never been in a relationship before. She didn't know what to do, but she felt worn out and emotionally drained from her long night. She typed out, "Are we broken up?" Then she hesitated, scared to hit send, knowing it could unleash a domino effect and completely break whatever threads still bound them together. But she couldn't stay in limbo, it was driving her crazy. She hit send. She waited. God, what was taking him so long to respond? Did he want to torture her? This was bad news. She finished walking Joker and went back inside. Then her phone pinged. Her stomach tied itself in knots as she opened her messages.
Do you really think I'd buy groceries for you if we were broken up?
Maddy blinked at the text. She replied, "I don't know. I thought maybe you felt guilty."
Nope, but we need to talk. Come over.
Maddy read the text twice. We need to talk? Shit, why did those words scare her? It was not going to be a pleasant conversation. She felt like she was in trouble. Couldn't they just talk over text messages? Ugh, no, that might actually be worse. Maybe it was better to handle this kind of thing in person. With shaky hands, she texted. Yeah, okay. Should I go to your place?
I'm at the car garage. Jack's Auto Repair. It's on Highway 20. Here's the address.
Maddy felt a spike of anxiety. She hadn't planned on going to his workplace. It was kind of intimidating, the thought of seeing him out in the adult world, doing adult things. She knew he worked at a car garage, but she didn't know where. I guess I'm about to find out. She entered the address for Jack's Auto Repair into her phone's GPS. It was only a 2-mile walk down the highway from her house. Not far at all, actually. She was surprised. 3 miles was about her daily commute to school. She could walk there in less than an hour. One thing was for sure. Gareth did not text like the kids at school, who spent all their time on the phone. His messages were brief and to the point. She felt like she was talking to an authority figure. And now she felt like she was in trouble. I'm on my way. She sent him the short message. Maddy dropped into the trailer briefly to tell her dad she was taking Joker on a walk and wouldn't be back for a while. Dean waved her off. He looked groggy from just waking up, and he was lighting up a joint. As she shut the door behind her, she heard Dean grumble.
Hey, pick up laundry detergent while you're out.
Maddy rolled her eyes. She was going the opposite direction from town, so that wasn't happening. He could buy his own damn detergent, though she would probably pick some up from the store tomorrow on her walk home. Then she started walking towards the highway, Joker following happily along on her rope leash.
Hey, thanks for listening to Heart of the Wolf by Mariposa. Next chapter is about to start, but I wanted to remind you super quick that you're smart, sexy, and you got a great ass. Also, don't forget to pick up a copy of the print book or ebook, available on Amazon.com. Like and subscribe to this channel for more story. Next chapter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Chapter 12. Maddy walked down the long black ribbon of highway through the mountains. The rain had stopped for a bit, though the sky was still overcast. She had no idea Gareth worked this close to her house. Geez, no wonder she saw him so often in the woods. If she or her dad owned a car, maybe she would have encountered him a lot more often. Highway 20 was the only route from Black River over the mountain into upstate New York. The highway cut through an old-growth pine forest before it climbed upward and turned east into the Adirondacks. The woods were filled with black bears, moose, white-tailed deer, bobcats, and coyotes. It was unusual to encounter a predator like a wolf. Maddy wondered if she would ever see the beast again. Maddy loved watching the wildlife on the mountain. It was better than a movie in her opinion. Nature always seemed busy if she took the time to slow down and watch. Overhead, a flock of honking geese flew by in V formation, their necks stretched out and white wings flapping. Over the summer, it wasn't unusual to see clouds of monarch butterflies making their way through the meadowed woodland. October was a bit late in the year, but she kept an eye out. Butterfly watching was one of Maddy's secret, hidden pleasures. She had a whole sketchbook full of drawings. She wasn't very good, but she tried to capture all the different patterns on their wings. Through the forest to her left, if she went far enough, she would encounter the banks of the Black River, which flowed into Lake Ontario 100 miles away. To her right, the mountain reared its mystical, white-crowned head. At this time of year, the passes were closed higher up the mountain, which meant less traffic on the highway. It took about 45 minutes to walk to Jack's Auto Repair. Joker made the walk a bit more challenging because she kept trying to chase after squirrels or follow weird smells off into the brush. Maddy kept the leash tightly wrapped around her wrist. Joker might be a puppy, but she was strong. As she walked, Maddy thought over her argument with Gareth on Friday night. She was still hurt by everything he had said.
You're not his daughter, Mads. You're his housekeeper and his caretaker. That's it. That man doesn't give a shit about being your father.
Dean was the only father she had ever known. She knew he wasn't her real dad, and she wasn't his real daughter, but the reminder of it stung. This was her life, she couldn't change it. Gareth owed her an apology. Maddy saw the sign for the gas station first, a small convenience store with 4 pumps out front. Jack's Auto Repair was across the parking lot. A slight incline separated the two properties, covered in gravel and tall grass. Only a few cars were at the pumps. Maddy walked past the gas station to the garage. Jack's Auto Repair was painted light gray with a new red sign. It had 2 big garage doors open, revealing the service ramps inside. 2 cars were boosted up on metal lifts, a big F-250 and a little red Mercedes. A steel gate enclosed a car lot at the back of the garage where it looked like a few trucks were being kept overnight. Maddy assumed they were waiting on parts. A small office with a blue door hung off the side of the building. Maddy didn't know if she should go into the garage directly or through the office. She didn't see Gareth anywhere. Then she caught sight of someone. A skinny kid close to her own age was working underneath the Mercedes. He might have been 22 or 23. He noticed her approaching and stepped away from the car. He wiped his hands on a rag that he thrust into his back pocket. Maddy's eyes swept over him curiously. He wore gray overalls with the words Jack's Auto Repair embroidered over the left breast pocket. Besides that, he had an edgy look about him. His face was thin with hollow cheeks, and Maddy thought he sorta resembled a goat. He had a little triangular soul patch on his chin, black plugs in his ears, and an eyebrow piercing. Maddy imagined him and her friend, B, making a cute couple. They definitely had the same aesthetic.
Hey there, can I help you? Cute dog, by the way.
Thanks. I'm here to see Gareth? He looked her up and down. Maddy couldn't tell what he was thinking. She was a little sweaty from the walk, but she didn't think she looked that bad.
He's busy right now. We got a tow truck if you're broken down. I can haul you back here for a fee.
Oh, no, it's not that. He told me to come by. I think he's expecting me.
Okay. What's your name? He didn't say anything to me.
Maddy frowned. Was she supposed to make an appointment? Who was this guy? Look, it was kind of last minute. I just walked here.
Maddy!
She heard Gareth's loud, deep, booming voice echo from the other side of the garage. They both jumped. Yeah, it's me. Her own voice sounded high and timid in comparison.
Bring her back, then.
Sorry, I'll take you back now. My bad.
The punkish guy gave her a bashful smile. As he led her into the garage, he explained.
Boss says not to bother him when he's working, but then he goes and changes his mind all the time. He wants me to get better at handling customers.
It's okay, no worries. They found Gareth at the back of the garage. He was bent under the hood of the big truck with a socket wrench in hand. His black hair was tied back in a messy, partial bun at the base of his neck. His jaw and cheekbones looked sharp enough to cut a finger. His eyes glimmered bright hazel in the soft autumn daylight.
Here she is, boss.
Thanks, Vin. You almost finished with the Mercedes?
Yeah, just gonna write up the invoice.
Right. Keep an eye on the front.
Vin nodded. He gave Maddy a little wave, then walked back through the garage. Maddy didn't know what to do. She hovered nervously, watching Gareth's broad back as he finished working on the transmission. She glanced around the interior of the garage. She hadn't spent much time around cars. She saw metal shelves lined with oil canisters and transmission fluid, different sizes of wheels and hubcaps, some larger tools and machinery. But the shop was clean and well organized. No garbage or clutter lying around. So this is where he works, she thought. He owned this place. It was his garage. He was running his own small business. He even had an employee. Someone called him boss. I'm dating a boss, she thought. Or at least, she had been dating a boss for all of 3 days. Their talk would probably put an end to that. Now she felt like a kid who had been called to the principal's office, especially in a place like this, all heavy metal and cement, and no softness. Their meeting felt like all business. Finally, Gareth finished and straightened. He sighed, stretching out his back.
Did you walk here okay?
He turned to look at her. Well, shit. She could tell just by his tone that he had something on his mind, and his expression was too serious. He reached up and undid his hair, shaking it out, running his hands through it, then pulling it back. He tied it again at the base of his neck. Yeah, it wasn't bad. I brought Joker with me. Then he noticed the dog. Joker was lying on the cool cement floor. He stooped down to scratch her ears and she thumped her tail. She was much more calm after the long walk.
Come with me.
She and Joker followed him through the garage into a small break room. The walls were unapologetically gray and utilitarian, the cement floor covered with black rubber mats. Harsh fluorescent lights hung from the ceiling, one of them was out. She saw 4 lockers, a card table, a mini fridge, and a microwave. Gareth unzipped his work overalls and stepped out of them, then tossed them in one of the lockers. Underneath his gray jumpsuit, he was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans. She stared again at his muscular, tattooed arms. She read over those words, Loco Lobo. She knew loco meant crazy, but she didn't know the other word. He took a minute to get a plastic bowl down from a cabinet in the break room and fill it with water from the sink, which he gave to Joker. Meanwhile, Maddy looped the end of Joker's leash to one of the cabinet doors. Stay. Joker wagged her tail. She wasn't trained, but she seemed happy enough to sit on the floor next to the water bowl and pant.
This way.
Gareth led her through the break room into an even smaller office, with barely enough room for a filing cabinet and a desk with a new computer on it. The computer was turned off and looked like it hadn't been used in a while. The desk was covered in paperwork. It was a bit chaotic, and Maddy felt slightly better about the state of her house. He shut the door firmly behind them.
All right, have a seat. Let's talk.
He pulled up a metal stool and pointed to the computer chair behind the desk. Maddy took the computer chair while he sat on the metal stool. The chair was very low to the ground, and he was higher up than her. She gazed up at him nervously. He said with a bit of humor in his voice.
You don't gotta look so scared. I won't punish you.
What do you mean?
You look like you think you're in trouble.
Oh yeah, ha. So, I texted you a question. She waited as Gareth released a slow breath.
Right. You want to know if we're broken up.
Maddy fidgeted with her fingers. She stared down at her hands in her lap. Gareth leaned forward slightly, trying to catch her gaze.
Why'd you ask me that? You freaking out?
Maddy released a breath she didn't know she was holding. Well, she began, yeah, I guess so. You didn't text me yesterday, and you brought my stuff back to the trailer. I thought maybe it was a sign, like maybe you're over it. She glanced up and searched his eyes. Are we breaking up?
I don't plan on it. But Mads, I'm not gonna lie, we gotta talk about Friday night. 'Cause I'm pissed.
What? Why?
You agreed to stay at my place. But the moment Dean appears, that changes.
Well, I had to take care of him.
You don't owe him that. He's a grown man. And I don't want you staying in the trailer after what you showed me.
What did I show you?
On your back. Those scars.
Oh.
That's right. Oh. After seeing those, I don't want you anywhere near that guy. I want you far away from him.
So what, you want me to move out?
Something like that.
Maddy bit back a laugh. Her voice had a hysterical edge. That's wild. Where would I go? You want me to move in with you? Gareth raised an eyebrow. He didn't need to respond. Maddy glanced away from his steady gaze and swallowed past a hard lump in her throat. Yeah, that's what he wanted. She knew that, and she liked his house. It was quiet, peaceful. She could see him every day, which was kind of mind-blowing, but the thought of moving out was overwhelming. There was too much uncertainty. She wrapped her arms around herself. That's a lot to ask of me right now, she said.
Why?
Because someone has to take care of the dog.
That's not a real reason, Mads.
Maddy knew it wasn't. She could always bring Joker along, or find the pup a new home. She couldn't really vocalize her reasons. It was all instinctive. Reality was, she didn't know Gareth that well. She was drawn to him, but they had barely spoken over the last 5 years. She felt that cosmic force pulling them together, but he was intimidating as hell. There was plenty about him she didn't know. On top of that, she was afraid of leaving the trailer. She had lived there her whole life. It would be a lot easier if Dean liked Gareth, but he didn't. Maddy would get her ass kicked if Dean found out they were dating. What would happen if she left the trailer to live with Gareth?
You're not gonna tell me why.
Maddy realized she had been quiet for a long time. I can't stay with you, she repeated. It's too much, too soon. We've been dating for 4 days. I can't just move in with you.
Sure, Mads. I get that it's fast. But you're a special case. We didn't just meet, and I've got a problem with someone leaving bruises on you.
She dropped her eyes, ashamed.
He beats on you. Mads.
He hasn't hit me in over a year.
Then what's that bruise on your back?
That's different. It was an accident. He pushed me because I was in the way. Gareth was quiet, his shoulders stiffened. Maddy fought the urge to over-explain. Her excuse sounded weak, even to her own ears, but it was the truth. Dean had apologized for shoving her. He was drunk. Just give me some time to figure some stuff out, she said.
All right. How long?
Really? We're going to put a deadline on it?
Yeah, we are. So how much time do you need? A week? 2 weeks?
Maddy stared at Gareth with wide eyes. He looked dead serious. Try like a year. You can't force me to do something I don't want to do.
You're right. I can't. But I'm warning you now, little girl. If I see one more bruise on you, I will drag you out of that trailer by the scruff of your neck.
Maddy stared at him, biting back her retort. She could have been snarky, but something about his voice, so low and gruff, made her throat close up. He looked like he was about to drag her back to his house right now. I'm not moving out in 2 weeks. I told you my life's a mess. I warned you to stay far away from me. So this is it. Take it or leave it. Gareth folded his big arms across his chest. He gave her an appraising look.
You really want me to stay away from you?
Maddy dropped her eyes. She shoved her hands into the pockets of her hoodie. No. Gareth released a deep, put-upon sigh. Then he reached out. He caught the front of her sweater and pulled her over to him. Maddy stumbled forward, out of the chair, as he dragged her into his arms. Her eyes widened as his warmth enveloped her. She found herself standing between his legs, leaned up against his inner thigh. He held her loosely in the circle of his big arms. He smelled a little bit like sweat with a hint of oil and rubber, totally manly.
All right, so I said some words Friday night. I think I hurt you. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Maddy swallowed. Standing this close to him made her heart race erratically in her chest. She was really bad at talking about her feelings, especially face-to-face like this. Throwing a tantrum or yelling seemed so much easier. She felt her anxiety spike. So Friday night, you really hurt my feelings. You said some harsh stuff.
Yup, I know. So what hurt you?
You said Dean's not my real dad.
Well, he's not.
Maddy flinched. She was trying really hard to be nice, but she felt her temper flare again. That's a fucked up thing to say. You basically said my stepdad doesn't give a shit about me. Gareth brushed a strand of red hair back behind her ear. He studied her face as though considering his next words. Still, she thought he could have considered them longer, since when he spoke, it wasn't exactly sweet.
Mads, sorry to be blunt, but he doesn't give a shit about you. I know it's not black and white. He's probably an alright guy sometimes. But trust me, he doesn't care about anyone but himself.
Maddy felt tears stinging her eyes. Gareth's voice gentled.
I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. But I meant what I said. I was being honest. It's tough love, baby girl.
I can't help my stepdad's issues.
He's abusing you. Using you. And he's got you pinned down.
Maddy flushed. She hated how he looked at her, his gold eyes piercing her like they could see into her soul. She felt like he had the upper hand, and she hated it.
You gotta stop lying to yourself, baby girl. I saw the bruises. How do I know he hasn't done anything since Friday? Would you tell me?
Maddy hesitated, shocked by his question. She didn't have time to react. Gareth turned her suddenly in his arms and yanked up her sweater, his eyes running over the skin of her back. She gasped. His warm, calloused hand brushed the spiderweb of raised scar tissue. He rested his palm there for a moment. Her heart quickened. She felt the possessiveness in his touch. A shiver of anticipation went down her spine, and warmth settled in her belly. He owned her, she knew it. But she couldn't just belly up like a lost puppy. Trusting people came at a price. He dropped her sweater back down and turned her around to face him. He pushed up her sleeves to check her arms.
Good, no new bruises. So I don't have to kill a motherfucker today.
Then he held her wrists and looked into her eyes.
Mads, you deserve better. You don't owe that piece of shit anything. Give me one reason why you should stay loyal to him.
Hot tears stung her eyes. She felt her face grow pale. He didn't throw me out when my mom died.
What? Is that it?
Yeah, I was an orphan. He could have sent me to social services, but he didn't. He gave me a place to live. Maddy cringed inwardly. Saying it out loud sounded pathetic somehow, but Dean had thrown it in her face 100 times.
In your mom's trailer?
Yes.
Does he own it?
Maddy hesitated. She actually didn't know anything about that. I don't know.
So the generous and benevolent Dean Harvey let you stay in your mom's trailer after she died. Maybe the trailer belongs to you. Have you thought about that? Maybe he couldn't send you to social services because he would lose his home.
In truth, Maddy hadn't considered that. She had no idea whose name was on the title of the property. It hadn't occurred to her to check. Now she felt dumb. She had always thought of it as Mom's place. Maybe he had a point. I don't know, that's a lot to think about. But Gareth, you and me, we only just started dating. You keep pushing me to move out, but I really can't move this fast. I've never had a boyfriend before. I've never been kissed before. Until, in the car, when you... Gareth squeezed her wrists gently.
I know.
Dad says you got me fooled. He thinks you're just after teen pussy. Gareth grimaced. He glanced down briefly. A look of disgust flickered across his face, probably at Dean's raunchy language.
Well, some guys would be.
I think it's better if we're just friends right now, she blurted out. Like, slow down a bit, let me take this one step at a time. I can't move out of my house to live with you, that's psycho. No one would make that demand of someone they just met. I need to breathe. I need to slow down. Gareth looked thoughtful. He searched her eyes, his thumb stroked the inside of her wrist in a slow circle. The small touch made her relax. She felt some of the tension leave her shoulders as she waited for his response. He brushed another stray lock of long auburn hair behind her ear. Each small caress of his calloused fingers made her heart flutter. His eyes flickered over her face. He sighed.
Friends, huh? All right. Maybe I jumped in too fast and you weren't ready. You've been through a lot this past weekend. You're overwhelmed. I get it.
Thank you.
I'm not finished.
Maddy bit her lip.
We can slow down if that's what you need. But I see what's going on, Mads, maybe better than you do. You're a caretaker. You think it's normal, but it's unhealthy. You might put up with Dean's bullshit, but I won't. He's got addiction issues, and it's running you into the ground.
He's not just some addict. He's my dad.
Yeah, well, that's hard.
You really think I'm unhealthy? Like I'm toxic?
I think you're in a toxic situation.
So, yes, he thought she was toxic. She almost heard Kaylee's voice in her head, taunting her. Maddy struggled with that for a moment. She knew her home life was unhealthy, how could it not be? But it was the only home she had ever known. This is all my fault. Why am I so fucked up?
You know what I saw on Friday?
What?
Dean comes first. Before yourself, before me, before anything else. You might say you hate that guy, but he calls you at midnight from an hour away and you go running. Your world revolves around that wasted son of a bitch. So sure, let's go slow. Let's be friends. Because if I'm your boyfriend, I'm not putting up with Dean. And I won't watch you caretake his sorry ass. I gotta nip this threesome in the bud.
Maddy felt frustrated and confused. He was turning the tables on her, like being friends was his idea. She crossed her arms angrily in front of her chest and glared at him. Gareth sat casually on the stool as he considered her. Why did he have to look so calm? All right, then we're just friends.
Yep.
You act like it's no big deal.
I want you to sort out your situation with your dad before I sort it out for you.
Maddy scoffed. You don't have to sort out anything for me. I already think Dean's an asshole.
So you gonna move out?
Maddy was silent.
All right. You gonna tell him you saw me today?
Maddy glanced up and met Gareth's eyes. She couldn't answer him. His face darkened the longer she hesitated.
I don't like you sneaking around. I get you learn to lie to protect yourself, but it's a bad habit, Mads.
She felt ashamed. Why did he have to make her feel like a kid? You don't have to worry about me lying anymore. We're not together, we're just friends. So you can ditch me whenever you want. Maddy tried to sound tough, but she saw Gareth's face soften.
I'm not abandoning you, Mads.
Sure. Fine. Right. They stared at each other for a long moment. Maddy couldn't handle the tension in the room between them. She felt angry and sick and hurt. The office was so small and cramped, she thought she would suffocate. She needed fresh air and space to think. She stood up in the small office and turned to the door. I'll just go now. She started to push by him, but his arm snaked out. He caught her easily by the waist and dragged her back into his body, between his legs. His strong arms trapped her against him. One hand went to the back of her neck. He angled her head as his mouth boldly slanted over hers. Maddy froze. Her lips parted instinctively as his tongue dipped into her mouth. Fuck. He tasted delicious. His breath mingled with her own, his kiss deep and sensual. She felt a slight brush of stubble from his jaw. His kiss deepened, his tongue thoroughly exploring her mouth. A little whimper of pleasure fought up from her throat as her knees grew weak. Her nipples began to tingle and swell beneath her sweater. His fingers wove into her hair, gripping her head firmly, holding her captive. She could feel the heat of his body through his white t-shirt. Fuck, he was so big. Spirals of pleasure moved through her at his touch. His arms held her bound. Her fingers started to travel on their own, inching up his back to his muscular shoulders, then up his neck into his thick hair. The messy bun at the base of his neck came loose in her hands. His black hair fell soft and silken across his shoulders. She ran her hands through it in a daze. He shifted against her, pulling her more firmly against his body. He wasn't shy in the least as his arms slipped down and his hands gripped her ass. He manhandled her through her black leggings. His long fingers pressed into her intimate folds through the thin spandex material. Maddy gasped in shock, squirming away with a little mew of protest, but he held her ass firmly in his big, strong hands. His fingers probed along her slit through her leggings. She thought he might tear her pants off. He was so aggressive.
Friends.
He repeated into her mouth, his voice thick with passion.
Let's be friends, Mads.
She moaned. She felt like melted butter. Her eyes slitted open. His face was dark with passion as he kissed her. She knew her own gaze must be sultry and vulnerable. He pulled her flesh against him, letting her feel the size of his erection through his jeans against her crotch. Then he leaned in close to her ear.
Why are you pushing me away, Mads?
Fuck. I'm not.
Don't lie to me.
He pinched her ass, hard. She squealed, squirming against him, arching in his arms like a cat. He caught her lips in a deep kiss, taking her noises into himself.
You know what I think.
He spoke into her mouth. She murmured something incoherent.
I think you're afraid.
Maddy tried to respond, but her words were muffled. He kept drowning her in kisses, at first passionate and slow, then soft and playful, then deep and lusty. She groaned. His lips traveled back to her ear, where he nibbled at her earlobe, catching it between his teeth, then down her neck, leaving a trail of pleasure. His hand went between her legs and he pressed against her clit. Maddy gasped and weakened, gazing up at him with a helpless, vulnerable expression. He gazed into her eyes, his own dark with lust.
You're so fucking beautiful.
She blushed. For a wild moment, she thought he would take her right there in his office. Drag off her panties and claim her virginity, make love to her like a scene from some steamy, late-night HBO special. She never got the chance to find out. One of the metal lockers in the break room slammed shut, and she heard Joker whine in excitement. Sounded like Vin was making lunch. Gareth released her with much reluctance. Maddy sucked in a deep breath. Her lips were swollen and soft, her cheeks flushed, her head spinning. She tried to stand up, but she overbalanced and fell against his chest. Why did she feel drunk? Gareth. She met his eyes. Shit. His look pierced her. She couldn't deny the hunger in his gaze. She felt it to her core. I'm sorry. I can't.
Why are you apologizing?
He drew her close again, and she shivered as his big, tatted arms looped around her. His lips brushed her forehead. The gentle caress brought tears to her eyes. I meant it when I said we should be friends. She felt terrible saying it again, but she knew it was the right thing to do. I can't handle this right now. I don't know how to be in a relationship. I can't. He hushed her gently.
It's all right. I know you're overwhelmed.
I'm sorry.
You don't gotta apologize, baby girl.
I'm really sorry, she repeated. Damn, why did he always make her cry? She tried to push away from him and stand up straight, but she overbalanced again, feeling dizzy. The room dipped slightly to the left. Gareth grabbed her by the forearms. He steadied her. He looked concerned.
You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm okay, I think. The lights are kinda bright.
Bright, huh? You look pale. You gonna faint on me?
No, I don't think so. The room kept spinning. She clung to his arms as her pulse raced. She felt like she couldn't catch her breath. Why was she so dizzy?
Mads.
Gareth's voice seemed far away. Something's wrong, she mumbled as her vision narrowed. His arms went around her, and he drew her against his chest as her legs lost strength. She felt like her limbs had turned to water and she was melting into the floor. The last thing she saw was his concerned face as she fell forward. Hi there, thanks for listening to Heart of the Wolf, a serial web novel adapted into a paranormal romance podcast. I can't believe Gareth and I are just friends right now, whatever that means. Monday morning at school is going to be a nightmare, the drama is just beginning. Stay tuned for the next episode, with new chapters posted every Monday and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So subscribe and share this channel with your friends.